Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Time for another racket review. It's been a season of rackets the last month. It's been Pure Arrows, Head Extremes to come, now it's the Prokennex, Technifiber, Wilson release, night session rackets. I talk about that in the mixed bag. I will be reviewing a lot of rackets and that can take its toll on you because you get disoriented in between rackets, which I talk about a lot. And you can also get some arm issues just from testing all these different variables all the time. Your body doesn't really get used to one setup. So be a bit cautious with all the testing. I do feel like when I'm in a heavy racket testing period, I do get a bit more of a sensitive arm and more issues than I have normally. Normally I'm generally quite fine except for a bad knee. If you have tennis elbow, Prokennex offer something quite unique with their Kinetic technology with micro beads that are transferred towards the impact zone when you hit the ball, relieving a lot of shock and vibration from your arm. So that's a great technology, actually really works. Sometimes in the past I felt like it dampens maybe the response too much and you don't 100% feel the ball. But with this Ki-10-305, I must say I feel really connected to this racket. It's the Prokennex I feel the most connected to of the rackets I've tried. I did like those yellow KIQ Plus 5. The names I cannot really talk about, but KI makes sense. It's Kinetic. This is the 10. Not sure why it's called 10, but you have to call them something. And it's a power racket, but it's not all the way to kind of these Pure Drives, Extremes, FX 500s from other brands. This is more of a controlled power. And the Kinetic tech, if you're not familiar with it, I mean, with these beads moving around, it does have a maracas style sound. So that can be a bit annoying to some players, but it doesn't really affect you when you play. But when you're walking in between points and if you're a guy who's just rotating your racket, it can affect how you feel about the racket depending on how much of a racket purist or nerd you are. I'm not really bothered by it, but it's there. So good to know that it actually has a sound and it does really work. If you have a sensitive elbow, you have any kind of problems, buy a Prokennex racket and string it with a multi-filament string or a poly at a really low tension and you'll be happy. I did string this with Head Lynx Tour, a string I really like, very controlled. I do not suffer from arm issues at the moment, although it can be a bit sensitive at times if I test too many rackets, as I said. But I do feel like this one, it really works for the arm despite the stiffness rating. So if we look at the specifications of this racket, 100 square inches, 4 points headlight strung, which is typical Pure Drive specs. 305 grams is a little bit heavier and we'll get to that. 68 stiffness, we're getting up towards the 70s. That's a pretty stiff racket, but with Prokennex rackets, you don't really feel that. And the 24mm beam actually feels a lot thinner down here. One thing to note here is the swing weight, and that's probably my main issue with this racket is that the swing weight is a bit too high. And that's the case with many Prokennex, not all of them. But overall, if you're going for a Prokennex racket to save your arm and you're a bit sensitive to heavy rackets or high swing weights, I'd definitely recommend going for the lighter model than you'd usually pick. You can then customize, add some lead tape up here or something if you want it a bit heavier, or you can probably play it as is. They're pretty stable rackets, but the high swing weights, as soon as you have a bit of a quality control issue, it becomes a problem. And that happened with the Technifiber racket I recently tried. It's also happened with this one. The Technifiber was 342 swing weight, too much for me and for most people. This was 337.5. I have to say that Lynx Tour is a heavy string. So even 1.25 gauge Lynx Tour, it will bump up the swing weight a little bit compared to polys in the same category, I would say. But still, it's a bit high. Even in the average swing weight rating from Tennis Warehouse listed, 331, anything above 330, it's becoming a little bit too much. Unless maybe it's a 95 square inch racket where I feel the whippiness of the racket, if it's enough headlight, works for me personally, because I played the 6-1-95. But this one is becoming a little bit sluggish at times. Otherwise, very connected to the ball. Nice plow through, really plows through the ball excellently. I have good touch. I feel like I could hit drop shots, nice at the net. It does have a tendency with the high swing weight and how it is made to really go through the ball, similar to the Technifiber racket. It feels like a kind of a sledgehammer effect on the ball, and that's very nice if you hit very flat. But players who want to impart more spin and maybe have a bit more of a wristy shot, I think you will struggle with this high swing weight. I did struggle to generate enough topspin at times with this frame because of the high swing weight. One way you can address this is to go for a thinner gauge poly, for example, if you want to play with polyester. So I could go with a 120 string instead, bump down the swing weight a bit, even 115 gauge. So that's a solution to it. I do like 125 gauge though, so it's still gonna be, you know, 330, but at least I bumped down the points a bit. But my issue with these high swing weight rackets is that you don't have a lot of room to customize or to get it your spec unless you're a beast and want them super high. So that's a little bit the issue. The good thing is that there is a 290 gram version with a lower swing weight, more room for customization, and there is a Ki5. I haven't reviewed that, but I'm sure it's very similar to this one with lower stiffness, less weight. It gives you also room for customization, and it's a little bit more of a playable frame. This one is in the top range for advanced players, while those frames, the Ki5 and the Ki10 290 gram, could appeal to many of you and many players. So the best feeling Prokennex for me, I think it did really well on slice shots, enjoyed it on serve, but I did struggle with the swing weight. So the weight and the swing weight a little bit heavy overall, but otherwise a very nice racket. And if you suffer from arm issues, I would look into Prokennex. I mean, you have a few brands like Wilson Clash, you have the head gravity rackets, pretty comfortable generally, and the Prokennex here, also good. For example, Donne as well has a lot of coarse and foam filling to make comfortable rackets. So there are a few brands that really pay attention to that. Then with other brands, they might go very stiff, but then have some dampening, but most often the dampening is not enough. But with Prokennex it is. So a very good racket, I must say, happy with it. Just an issue of the swing weight. So for me, if I'm gonna play with something like this, I'd go for a lighter version and customize it, or I play with a very thin poly, but that will change the way I usually string up my racket. So it's not the number one solution for me. But very good, nice specs, but perhaps an option for you to go for a lighter version. So it's good that they make these lighter versions because it gives us room for some quality control issues and also to be able to match rackets and customize them to the way we like. Well, that's all for this review. I hope you found it enjoyable. I hope you got something out of it. Definitely a brand to check out for you tennis elbow sufferers. Thanks again to Fuzzy Yellow Balls sponsoring videos. They have a great app called Crush It, teaches you how to use your Kinetic chain, forehand, backhand, and the serve, which is free. So you can pick a number of the Kinetic chain here and understand with a very long and detailed video how you can utilize this part of your body to generate more power on your shots. And in this case, the serve is free. Link in the description to check out the Fuzzy Yellow Balls app in the App Store, completely free app to download. And then you can subscribe if you want other modules and so on. That's about that. If you want to buy this racket, check out my affiliates in the description. Have a nice day and don't forget to play some tennis.